Welcome to the Spirit of Business, where businesses learn to thrive. I'm your host, Jamie Pritchard, and today my guest is Dave Carroll. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Jamie. Pleasure to be here.
Today we're going to talk about doing business with compassion. Now, at first glance, Dave would not appear to be the best qualified guest on this topic. He's been a musician for 30 years and lives a relatively quiet life, although he may have something to say about that in Nova Scotia. But Dave, this is something that is very near and dear to your heart because in 2008, you had a horrible customer experience with a major airline. Can you share with us what happened?
Yeah, so I've been in a band called Sons of Maxwell with my brother for 30 years now, but at the point 10 years ago, or 11 years ago now, we were traveling to Nebraska for a tour, and we'd never flown United Airlines, but we got on board, and they took our guitars and they put them in the bottom of the plane. And then when we were in Chicago to deplane, I was on the left-hand window seat and our bass player Mike was in the right hand, but in front of him there was a woman that didn't know we were musicians, and she looked outside the window and she said, "Oh my God, they're throwing guitars outside." And that became the opening salvo in a 9-month customer service maze that I tried to navigate to take the airline to task for what ended up being damaging my $3,500 Taylor guitar very badly. And they didn't want to do it. And so I promised them that I would take matters into my own hands in the only way I knew how, which was with music. And I posted the first of 3 videos called United Breaks Guitars about 7 months later, and it went viral. And it was an early viral video in social media.
Yeah, this was in 2009. So just to get this straight, you actually gave them the opportunity to help you rectify the situation. And this went on for about 9 months and they chose not to.
Yeah, that's right. I went through the customer maze and I talked to a whole bunch of people, and ultimately it was one customer service rep that I communicated with by email. And she said that because I hadn't opened a claim within 24 hours all those many months ago, that they were not responsible for the damage to the guitar. And there were reasons why I didn't do that, but I didn't accept it as an excuse, and it seemed wrong to me and irresponsible on their part. So I did what happened, and the rest is history.
And when United Breaks Guitars, the first song came out, I had read in my research for this interview that it impacted United's stock share for about a week to the tune of about 10%. Did they reach out to you at that point and said, "Dave, maybe we should have a discussion"?
No, the video was posted on July 6th, and 4 days later, on the 4th day, I spoke to United on the phone, and that was the day it hit about 1 million views. And they didn't ask me to take it down. They didn't say I had to take it down, but they did say it was regretful what happened. And I just said the second song's already written. The third one is coming. I'm not going to not do the trilogy because I wasn't looking to negotiate with you. This was a response when you promised to do nothing. And so if you have ultimately I said, if you have a policy that is not good for consumers and you'd like to change that, I would gladly put that in the third song and we can wrap this up together. But they didn't take me seriously, and that never happened. So the report of the stock dropping didn't happen for another month or so in September, when The Economist and BBC News announced that it dropped United stock by $180 million.
Wow. So this had a big impact, and I've seen now that it's had over 20 million views. Why a trilogy? Why not just the one song and end with that? Why did you decide to do 3?
Well, I didn't really know what I was doing. It was just basically I was so frustrated after so many months of dealing with United in all the different ways, and finally Miss Earlwig, the customer service rep, and she basically broke up with me and said, "We're going to move on from this, and we don't owe you anything because you didn't open a claim." And so in real time, I just started typing to her and I said, "Miss Earlwig, if I was a lawyer, I would sue United Airlines, but I'm not." And I looked and I had a guitar sitting right beside me, and I said, "I've got other tools at my disposal." And so I said, "I'm going to write 3 songs." And I just sort of blurted out 3 without thinking. And I think in the back of my mind, there was a thing called YouTube that was really new. Yeah. And a lot of the quality on the videos was really bad. And I thought, I'm going to try and get 1 million views with all 3 videos combined. And I thought I might need 3 shots at it to get to 1 million, because that seemed like a giant number. And so I said 3 just because I thought I might need 3 chances at it.
Okay. That's fair. And after this had sort of taken off, you started to get some requests from other businesses, corporations to come and talk about initially customer service, and that's where we're going to get into talking about doing business with compassion, which is something that you've sort of changed from customer service versus a shareholder to doing business with compassion. So tell us a bit more about that, what your thoughts are on that.
On the customer service piece or the speaking?
Yeah, so on the first, when you got into a speaking career and you were focusing more on customer service versus shareholders. So let's talk about that initially.
Yeah, so I got asked very early on if I wanted to be the opening keynote speaker at a big event in Colorado Springs. And I had never given any talks before of any length, even on stage. My brother Don did most of the talking. And if I were to talk on stage, I would maybe introduce a song until I got uncomfortable, and then I would just start singing. So it's not like I was a seasoned professional as a speaker, but they offered the opportunity, and I jumped through it, the door that they offered. And so a week later, I was a professional speaker, and I found that it wasn't that unlike to performing on stage. You're in front of people, you're trying to create moments and emotional connections with the audience, so I could understand all that. And I just broke my talk down into 8 5-minute segments and just discovered that I could do it, and I might be able to do it well with some practice. And so I just told my story, and that was one of the defining moments for me right in that very first gig, is that I wasn't prepared to really become a professional speaker. So I convinced myself, and if I did one smart thing, it was in the middle of the night before my first presentation, to remind myself that I'm only there to tell my story. I don't have to become Tony Robbins by the morning, because I'm not going to be no matter what. And I'm going to tell the story truthfully as it happened from the heart. And it worked out great. And so that's been my training, and that's been my philosophy on speaking, is just be yourself and be, if you're passionate and however that plays out and authentic, you'll be okay.
And that last word, that was what was resonating with me and was coming up for me, is great speakers are speakers that basically tell their truth and are authentic about it, lay it out there, and you don't worry about the people that you're going to tick off, or people that some will get it, some will love it, others maybe not so much, and that takes a lot of courage. So I give you kudos for that. To stepping up to the plate on that. So you have since that time that you have done other talks. Is it just about customer service, or what else do you talk about?
So initially, I would tell my story, why I did it, how it unfolded, and some of the crazy stuff that was going on when you have a viral video that's, it was the #1 music video in the world. So that tends to draw a lot of attention. And so I was telling those stories, but then I would, into the business insights, I would talk about customer service and the idea that you should care more about your customers, and simple, sort of what I ended up calling universal truths. And to me, it's kind of basic. And I think to everybody, it resonates so well because it's a universal truth is something that just resonates with everybody, but sometimes you need reminding of that. So I think my presentation was meaningful and impactful in that way. But I would always sort of end with this idea that why was the video successful? Because everyone wanted to know how to make a viral video at a time when they were just getting going, and no one still managed to crack that code. But I think some of the pointers in the direction of having a viral video were that, in my case, we were all connected. You and I and everyone in the world are fundamentally connected with one another. And something about the video and the way it played out allowed people to see themselves in this video, and it created a groundswell, whether you understood English or not. The images and the music together were powerful.
Yeah.
So that's where I took it. That was sort of my customer service message. And eventually, I realized that it doesn't just stop with the fact that you and I are connected. It sort of implies there's something more beyond that, and that's where I am now. And I thought, if we are connected, then is there an obligation to do something with that? And my answer is yes. If you and I are connected, then and we have a fundamental connection, then I have a fundamental obligation to care about your interests, because your interests are my interests. And that's when I got into compassion.
Okay. You talked about universal truths. And what do you think are some core universal truths that we need to remember or be aware of?
Everybody, I think, in the world likes to be loved and respected, and if not loved, at least respected. And that's definitely plays out in terms of business. And it doesn't just mean your customers, it means people in your organization, the people you work with, the people above you and below you, all want to feel respected. And if they don't, it forces people, I think the human reaction to that is to dig in and push back or to walk away. And you don't want your customers walking away to go somewhere else. And you don't want your employees looking for other jobs when you can keep a perfectly good employee by just treating them with respect. It's better than trying to find a new one and train them all over again. So I think that's an important aspect.
So having come from the corporate world just a little over a couple of years ago, and myself, I've worked for large corporations here in Canada, Bell Canada, TD, Financial. One of the things that I quickly learned, especially over the last 10 years, that what drives most businesses is shareholder value. And the bottom line, and it used to be where there was sort of a balance between the compassion and what the impact that it has on the employees. But I found my last 5 years with TD that just went out the window. And they didn't care about what it impacted, how it impacted. If you didn't like it, get off the bus. So how does a company, let's talk large corporations, how does a corporation like that is so focused on shareholder value start to become a business with compassion?
I think compassion needs to be a fundamental core value. It's not something that you do at the end of the third quarter if there's money left in the kitty to do something about it. You have to think about it from the outset. And so, and that comes with intention. Sometimes you need tons of money and infrastructure to enact a cultural change, but compassion really just comes one person at a time by giving it to somebody else. They pay it forward, and it's really inexpensive. So I say that caring is free and it's contagious. So the best thing a company could do to become a more compassionate company is to just start to be that. And that starts with, I have a protocol I call 3D compassionate design. And the idea is that shareholder value, like you pointed out, is the one thing that companies often go for to their own detriment. If you look at a triangle and you consider a triangle as a two-dimensional shape, nothing's particularly great about it. If you held it upright, it would fall down in the wind. There are 5 stakeholders to every business, and they are your customers, your employees, your suppliers, the greater good like the environment, and your shareholders. Profit is not a bad word. And if you take all of those 5 stakeholders and you try to find a win for all of them, you will have a radically different shape to your business than a triangle, because if you take one line for each of your stakeholders and add it to a triangle in a certain way, you'll find you'll get a pyramid out of that. And I would much rather be a pyramid as a brand than a triangle, because pyramids stand out in the horizon. Millions of people go to Egypt when there's not a pandemic to stand and have a selfie with them beside the pyramid. And I think any brand would like to have people taking a selfie with them and their brand to say, I'm proud to be with this. And you can turn your company into a pyramid by trying to find 5 simultaneous wins for all stakeholders instead of just going for shareholder value.
In your travels and your speaking, do you have an example, or have you seen some businesses that are starting to turn this around and make compassion rather than just shareholder value, try to balance that out?
Yeah, they're popping all over the place, and I like that it's happening in small and bigger organizations. During the pandemic, you hear of these stories of companies that weren't even engaged in the things that they ended up making. It's like the thing that they do was shut down, and so they had the option to just go home, or they could be something else. And the definition of compassion is it's the deep awareness of the suffering of another and the willingness to alleviate it. And I add one more angle, that as long as it's not to the detriment of yourself. So it's got 3 components. I have to look for pain points, I have to be willing to do something about it, and it can't hurt myself or other people in the process. And so a company that in New Brunswick, there was a company that was engaged in one thing, and all of a sudden they were making face shields for COVID-19. And they turned that around very quickly, because one, they saw the suffering that it was costing lives in their community if they didn't have the PPE. So they had the willingness to alleviate it, and it only helped people. So that was compassion, right?
And we have a good example here in Guelph, where I reside. Danby Products, which is one of the few freezer manufacturers, Canadian-owned freezer manufacturers left in the world outside of China. They quickly switched things over, much the same as your company in New Brunswick, to ventilators, and started producing hundreds of thousands of ventilators. And that's good. So you are starting to see some of these. Do you think, and maybe this is just just more of a hope, or with this pandemic, that business owners or businesses, especially large corporations, are really going to take a step back and make some significant changes?
I think they will, but to me, I don't really care why they do it. I would like to think people do it for the right reasons, because they feel it and they think they see themselves in other people and they want to make the world a better place. But some people will be motivated just by the bottom line of the business. And
Right.
That suits me fine. If their main motivation is shareholder value, but they care about the other four stakeholders simultaneously, it doesn't really matter, because everybody wins in that equation. And that with compassion, some people, again, might be motivated by money, but the money will come if you take care of the other people. And sometimes it's not as simple as thinking just 3 months ahead. Sometimes it's 3 years ahead. And
Exactly.
So when something happens 3 years from now,
Yeah.
And all the other companies are folding, you might have people that show you loyalty that you can't even imagine they're showing you in these times, because of something you did, because of the culture you created and the brand you created that makes you a little more bulletproof than the others.
So it might not, what I was thinking, because I've made more of a conscious decision myself. I know as a consumer now, I'm more cognizant of where I'm spending my money, and my first priority is helping local businesses here in my local area, especially food services, that type of thing. And I consciously am going to businesses that I know are a single owner operator, couple of people, because I know that they need that money. Perhaps if more of us think like that and start to shy away from the corporations, it will start to speak to some of their bottom line, and the change will be forced on them.
Yeah, I think you're right. And another point I'd add too is that in Canada, we're a little more humble than other places in the world, but I think all businesses, part of succeeding with compassion as a business model is to share your story and become a better storyteller. And if you are doing good things in the community, you should find a cool way to share the story, not to pat yourself on the back, but to let people know how you're engaged in your local community, what you're doing to make a difference, and how you being in that community and doing what you're doing is different than importing something from China, say. And you have an impact that way. So
could you give us an example of a business that you've seen that has done that is a good storyteller? Here's an example of what that might look like.
Nothing's coming to mind right now. And
Okay.
it reminds me when people say, what songs do you sing when I'm playing a gig and I can't remember a single song? I mean, they're everywhere. But I'm really passionate about the idea of storytelling, and I teach other people how to do it. I'm as a consultant, that's what one of my offerings is to tell people how to be better storytellers and shine a light on things that you're proud of and that show the essence of who you are.
Right.
But yeah.
Is that something you teach people to do, or just?
Yeah, it is. And it's a skill that can be taught. Some people are natural storytellers, and others just need to be, it's kind of, again, going back to the music thing. I hear music in my head. I play by ear. I don't really read music. But
Right.
Other people that just can't get their head around it, but they can be taught. And there are certain aspects of storytelling. Every story needs some tension. So it's not an information dump. You're taking people on a journey, and you're showing every story has a setting and a rising action and a falling action and a denouement at the end. And there's a high point, the climax of the story. And everybody has a story. That's the thing that some people don't realize, is they think, well, I don't really have a story. And here I am, the guy that had a broken guitar, when every musician in the world has had an airline break their guitar if they've traveled with their guitar. And mine became the #1 music video in the world for a month,
Right.
20 million views. So it had to do with the way I told the story without really understanding what I was doing while I did it.
What would our listeners need to know about your story now?
We've sort of touched on it, but it's 11 years old, and some people, I have speaker friends that say, "Are you still, peddling that story?" And I say to them, "If you had a story that lasted more than 2 weeks, you would too, right?" But for me, the idea is that it's not about a broken guitar; it's about caring about other people, and that's timeless, right? The Bible's been around for 2,000 years because it talks about compassion and caring and great stories, right? So I pick up stories along the way, stories about my family, stories of places I've been, and customer service stories and compassion stories. And the whole idea for me, it really boils down to caring about each other. And my compassionate design model rests upon three things that I think is sort of I call it like a universal solution to a lot of our problems, personally and business-wise, is through compassion, by loving and respecting yourself first. I think most people don't do that, and it shows in different ways. But love and respect yourself first. See everyone that you meet as an individual, and then the most important part is to, when you see that individual, try to find yourself in them. And if you can do that, you will. If you look hard enough, you will always find yourself in somebody else. And if you love and respect yourself first, you will find something in them that you already love and respect. And that's a great way to start a relationship, whether they're a customer, an employee, or a boss, or a shareholder.
And certainly in my life journey, both personally and professionally, that first point that you talked about was really loving the being that you are, and with all of your quirks and whatever that may be. We're all different, and I totally agree with you that is the first stage of any transformation into compassion and seeing that in others. Because if you can't see it in yourself, you're never going to see that in others. So that is great advice. Where do you get your inspiration from?
I'm pretty visual, so I find I pick up on things that maybe some people don't always see. Inspiration for songs will be little micro moments that busy people tend to pass by, but I see them. Yeah. And it's a gift to be able to see that, because that's where the humanity usually lives. Usually doesn't live on the surface. So as a songwriter, I've been blessed with some glimpses into things, poignant moments that I've been able to capture. And that's what I try and do with my talks around customer service or branding or storytelling. It's all in the small moments, and it's the small moments that add up to big moments.
If you were to share the three most influential people in your life, career, personally, that have helped you get to where you are, who might they be?
Well, I'd probably have to say my dad is first and foremost. We named our band Sons of Maxwell after our dad, and for good reason. And to the average person, he's no one special, but he's a man who's lived with amazing integrity my entire life. He is the epitome, I think, of the type of person who walks the talk, is honest, and never hear him say anything bad about anybody else, and that sort of thing. That's the type of person I want to be when I grow up.
Right.
In terms of, I think as an author, maybe Wayne Dyer had influence on me for a few years. I read a lot of his books, and the beautiful irony of everything is that I had read his books, and I thought I might like to meet him one day, and it ended up that because of United Breaks Guitars, I met his daughter. She introduced me to him. He got me a book deal, and I got published by Hay House Publishing and went on tour with Wayne Dyer for a couple of gigs and got to meet him. So it's the way the universe sort of works around, right?
You know, it's so funny how when we really show up and are authentic, the things that come to you. And I've read a lot of Wayne as well. I can remember reading his very first book when I was a teenager, Your Erroneous Zones. And I followed him from his transition into the more spiritual side of things, which I know he struggled with, and the language and using that. But I think as he got later in life, he just accepted that. And once he stepped right into that, he was a fantastic human being.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And a third person? So your dad, Wayne Dyer?
I liked Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin, the songwriter who wrote Cats in the Cradle.
Yeah.
When I first started playing guitar, I said I want to be that guy when I grow up too, because he didn't just perform songs, he performed moments for a living, and he sung from the heart. He wrote songs that, again, focus on great stories and poignant little moments that people often miss. And then in his off time, he cared about people, and he worked for the homeless and hunger campaigns and that sort of thing. So he was an all-around, he was a family man. He believed in music. He was a good songwriter, great storyteller, cared about people. What's not to like about that guy? So I liked him too.
Fantastic, fantastic influences. Now, you've referred to yourself several times as a storyteller, and recently you released a new song, The World Stops Ending. That was this year, is that correct?
Yeah, just a couple months ago.
Okay. And what inspired you to write this song?
Well, I was right in the middle of the pandemic, and we were all sort of in lockdown, and I was committing to getting back into music a little bit because the speaking and everything else had sort of taken some of the attention away, and I wanted to dive back into writing songs. So I had the idea of a title that just popped into my head called When the World Stops Ending, and called my friend Jamie Robinson. And typically I write alone, but I called him and said, you want to try and write this together?
Right.
And he said yes, and we went on Zoom, and we just over a couple of Zoom calls, we wrote the song. And normally I don't start with the title, but I did this time. And the way we approached it was we started asking questions to probe ourselves about what the song could turn into, which is typical. But we decided that we would make the song about the questions. Rather than the questions leading to the answers that we write about, we let the song be the questions and didn't prescribe an answer, but we offered one up in the chorus that says we should love each other better than ever before, and will we remember ourselves when we come out of this moment, because there's a lot of enlightenment that's been happening when we're in pandemic isolation, and we're hanging out with family and seeing things and maybe not driving like some people in your part of the country that are driving an hour or 2 hours a day each way.
Yeah.
Commuting. That's a lifestyle choice, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic song, and I really enjoyed listening to it. Last question. What does the spirit of business mean to you?
I totally buy into the idea, and it's not my idea, but I buy into the idea that the purpose of every business and every business person and every person personally is to be of service. And so the spirit of business to me is trying to carve out a living and a business based on helping other people solve problems that they may not even know they have. But at the end of the day, when you do your job well, you're being of service to other people. That's the spirit of business to me.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Dave, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us here on the Spirit of Business. We look forward to following you. If people want to get a hold of you or look at your music, where can they find you?
I'm the best way for me is probably through my website. Everything Dave Carroll happens at davecarrollmusic.com. You have to put the music in there because there's a whole bunch of Dave Carrolls in the world, and there's a Dave Carroll in England that all the other Dave Carrolls are thinking about taking out, but he's a nice guy, so we're leaving him alone for now.
All right. Thank you very much, and we hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
When the world stops ending and we catch our breath, will we know ourselves better at all? What will life look like and what will be left? Will we have the same problems to solve? When the world stops ending and we're back on our feet, what will we do with our time? Will we place our importance on the bitter or sweet and leave what is best left behind? measure and help one another without keeping score. When the world stops ending once more. When the world stops ending and we hit restart, what will be first on our list? Will we fill every hour from daylight to dark to make up for all that we missed? Will a new light erase? Will our fear be replaced when the world stops ending? From here to Manhattan, I hope that it happens. We love so much better than ever before, and find buried treasure in the moments we measure, and help one another without keeping score. When the world stops ending from here in Manhattan, I hope that it happens. We love so much better than ever before, and find buried treasure in the moments we measure, and help one another without keeping score. When the world stops ending and we catch our breath, will we know ourselves better at all?